All right, what's going on, guys? Dan Watson, learning cameras, and I have got an awesome camera right here. This is a Sony A99II. This is a camera that I have been looking forward to for a long time. I got to use it originally when Sony did an event out in Austin. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that video or not, but it was kind of my first impressions with the camera. Got to shoot some really cool sporting events and some other events with that on both photo and the video side. So that was kind of my first exposure to this camera. But now I've had it a little bit longer, had the chance to put it up against my 5D Mark IV, which I've been using for quite a while now as well, to give you kind of my impressions going back and forth between those cameras. There are some clear advantages to both of these cameras, and it's kind of interesting to see those. Now, again, all the images that I took for this, they're going to be available to you guys. So check the image description, or the description for YouTube down below. I'm going to post a link for that, as well as links to be able to purchase a camera and some other things that you might want to check out. So download those, download the raw files, put them in Lightroom yourself. Check out the low light results. It's all for you to check out. Take a look at what this camera has to offer. It's a pretty cool camera, so I really am looking forward to this one. Now, while I've been shooting with Sony cameras for quite a while, the A7R II, the A7, the A7S, A7S II, A6300, and 6500 are all cameras that I have personally done a review on, as well as like the RX cameras and things like that. This is by far not my first Sony camera. However, this is my first Sony A-mount camera that I've used. You have a translucent mirror in this one. Sony's been doing that for a little while now. This is kind of the point where I'm beginning to wonder if it's a good idea or not. When mirrorless cameras were not very good, especially with the autofocus system, it was kind of giving you some of the benefits of mirrorless without having to completely go to mirrorless and still be able to use a traditional AF system. So Sony is saying it's still extremely relevant, because basically what it's done is taken its mirrorless style on-sensor AF system and put that in concert with a traditional AF system of a DSLR, and it's able to do that because the translucent mirror is just reflecting some of the light upwards on that sensor, and so that sensor is able to basically focus as a normal DSLR would with a mirror, as well as having most of the light pass through the mirror and go straight to the sensor and record like a mirrorless. So you're getting kind of an advantage of both of those systems. However, there's some disadvantages as well. That is the main reason why I'm wondering if it's still available. Still really in our best interest to have both of those technologies. But Sony is claiming some pretty killer AF performance because of those, and I will say everything does seem very good. I had no trouble focusing on anything. The focus system itself is very advanced. I'm coming from a 5D Mark IV, which is one of the best cameras for autofocus, I would say, and I'm having no issue shooting with the Sony. It has been a great experience. I'm able to lock on autofocus. Overall, the hardware in this camera is very good. It's a very chunky camera despite being smaller than the Canon 5D Mark IV, so you can kind of see the differences here. It is a shorter camera, and as well the width is going to be the other thing that's defining it. You still have a good amount of room on the grip, so I wouldn't worry too much about hitting some wider lenses on there. It's not as big as some other cameras, but it's still probably enough for me. All of your basic controls are there that you would expect from a camera. I will say this is probably the best implementation of a flip screen, because you can do front shooting, you can do down, up, whatever you want to do, front and down. I mean, there is an endless amount of options, close it off. So I really do like this implementation of a screen. Now, it's not touchscreen, which actually Canon is giving us for once, and Sony is still kind of holding off on the touchscreen for these. They do have it in the A6500. That's really the first one that they're doing it in. It's not the greatest implementation on the camera, and again, it's only for touch autofocus, so we'd have to see what they would do with A9 cameras. Now, one thing I will say that I did like about Canon is I did use the depth of field button for here for fast switching between single point and servo. So if somebody was, I'm shooting portraits and then all of a sudden I want them to kind of walk towards me, I had this set so I can just hold this button and it switches into servo. Basically you hit this button right here and you can use this scroll wheel right here if you want to navigate between your autofocus systems, but it's just an extra button on there. But you can go between your standard and your servo and your manual focus and all of that from that button. And also one nice feature is that you can make this click or clickless. And that is a really cool feature. So if you're using this for video or you would like just a clickless button, this is nice because you can get continuous scrolling. You can set this to maybe your audio volume levels and be able to adjust those really easily. Now Sony does offer a ton of customization in this camera, and that's something Sony has always done very well. This is no exception. You can basically set this camera up exactly how you want it. There are some really cool, neat features in this thing, which maybe I'll get a chance to go over some later videos about how to set this thing up, but there's some really, really cool options for customizing this camera the exact way that you want it. Now we do have a 42 megapixel sensor, just like the A7R II, and this thing is awesome. The image quality is amazing on this camera, tons of dynamic range. A little less room on the highlights than I would like, but plenty of room on the shadows to be able to open this thing on post. You have extremely fast shooting as well. You can do 12 frames per second on this thing, and so it's a very, very nice camera system. Being able to shoot 42 megapixels that fast is really unbelievable from cameras like this that'll only do, I believe this one's 7. In low light as well. Very, very good results. It's a little bit, I would say it's a little bit less performance than the A7R II. I would chalk that up to being a translucent mirror, so basically you're getting a little bit of light loss. I would say it's about a third of a stop, 2/3 of a stop from that mirror reflecting some of the light to the AF module. And so you are losing just a little bit of low light results, but still very, very good. 6400 ISO still looks great to me. You can take a look at the pictures yourself, but I have no problem using it at that. So overall, for a 42 megapixel sensor, this is one of the best that you will find, period. Now, the biggest reason that I have been looking at this camera on a personal level, as far as switching from Canon to Sony, has been the video performance. I've been using Sony cameras for a long time for video, and they're absolutely amazing. You get stunning low light performance, you get plenty of dynamic range, all of the features that you could want, great 4K recording as well, and all of that is packed into this professional level body with all the ports you need, dual card slots, battery grip, tons of battery life on this thing. So overall, this seemed like a great camera. Also, this articulating screen can be great for video as well, because no matter where you are shooting, it seems to be able to pull that off nicely. And once you separate this from a tripod mount, even if you have a long plate on here, you still have the option of having this screen move exactly where you want it and still be able to record. So that's nice. You can have this thing on a tripod and have your screen position wherever you want. So it's great for shooting from that perspective. Now, there's a huge limitation when it comes to video on this, and it is due to the translucent mirror, but that is your aperture is locked at f3.5 if, here's the if, you want to enable autofocus. So if you have autofocus enabled, it basically switches into pure program mode, which means that you have absolutely no control over your shutter speed, which is huge for video, obviously. Also, you can control things like ISO, but that's it. Your shutter speed is going to adjust automatically. You're in full program mode, and also your aperture is locked at 3.5. So that's an unfortunate thing, especially if you're shooting with primes that might have a much wider aperture that you want to shoot at. You will not be able to do that on this camera unless you go into manual focus. Now, once you go into manual focus, it's like all the cameras of the past. You do have full recording capabilities, and you also have focus peaking and other tools like that. Now, I'm going to say this. I have been using manual focus for a long time because Canon didn't even have it until the 5D Mark IV. So no problem with manual focus. However, how I would use that camera is I would autofocus on my subject, lock autofocus, and then I would start recording. If a subject moved on me, I would use manual focus to adjust. And it was a bummer not having focus peaking. Screens were good enough I could normally pull it off, and I could use an external monitor if I ever needed focus peaking on that. So that was kind of how I handled it back then. The downside to this is that you don't have autofocus at all before or after recording. It basically, once you go in video mode and set it into manual, it's gone. So you can't even lock on your subject before recording the same way that I would on the Canon. So it's even a little bit weaker on the autofocus side. If you like using autofocus at all, it's not going to be a fan for you. But however, there's a lot of you that just shoot video and you don't mind manual focus at all. I will say that for those of you out there who are doing this, this is probably not the camera you're looking at. This is a great stills image performer. I think that this is going to lean a little bit more towards your wedding photographers and your photographers who are also going to be shooting video, and those people might want autofocus, especially because Sony is actually really good at autofocus. So their systems that they have in the A6500, even the A7R II, are extremely good, accurate, and in many ways better than most people who are using these cameras who are going to be manually focusing them, especially if you don't have like follow focus rigs and all that kind of stuff. With these lenses, it's really easy and good on those cameras to be able to autofocus straight in the camera. So that is something that is a big bummer to me, and I'd say it's rather unfortunate. The other big negative to me is lenses. Now, the A-mount line does have a great selection of lenses. You do have some access to Sigma lenses as well, although Sigma's new lenses are not seeming to support Sony A-mount. So, Sigma has some pretty cool lenses coming on the market right now, like the 85mm f1.4. They have a brand new 24-70 f2.8. I actually like their lenses a lot, and I use them quite a bit. I've got an 80D here. I've got the 50-100mm on here, and I've got the 18-35 Sigma. Many of you have probably just seen my 85mm 1.4 review that just went out. So overall, I like their lenses a lot. So not having access to them is kind of a bummer for me, especially because I'm not too sure what Sony's going to be producing in the future. But I don't know why. This just wasn't my favorite lens to be using with this, and I didn't find the performance to be as good as some of the other systems that I've used. Now, that said, you do have access to quite a bit of lenses on the Sony A line, so that's a good thing. And whether or not they hold that up in the future is going to be a matter of how Sony is dealing with it. So, I don't know. Overall, my thoughts are, this is absolutely a great camera. There's nothing wrong with this camera. It is amazing shooter in every way. The 42 megapixel burst mode, as well as your low light performance coming from this staggering sensor, are simply unrivaled in the market today. You're getting quality that you just cannot get out of competing systems, and I'm looking at this one right here. Autofocus performance is still extremely good. However, I haven't really had any issues with the 5D Mark IV or anything like that, so I don't find it as compelling anymore. They're just all unbelievable in their own right. One thing that I do like is that I can focus now in the corners. However, when I do that, I am dealing with contrast only, so it does not work as well, especially for tracking. If you're going to be autofocusing in the corners, you're better off sticking to those dual points in the middle that are using both. If you want to use those good points, you're actually sticking to a center area that's a little bit less than what Canon gives you. However, if you want to focus in general, you could focus almost to the extent of the screen. So it's a really, really nice system as well. Battery life is solid. The hardware is pretty good. Again, my only issue was that joystick, the lenses, and then if you're a video shooter and want autofocus performance, it's a pretty big negative to me. Now, the way I understand it, Sony cannot fix this via firmware. However, there have been rumblings that Sony could fix it by firmware. So I don't know who to believe. At the initial introduction of this, it really seemed like this is a hardware issue due to the translucent mirror. Sony's had this for a long time. All of these translucent cameras do have a fixed aperture and have that for autofocus. And that's kind of a thing that is limited with video recording on these cameras. So I think it's going to stay that way with this one. So just know that going in. I definitely wouldn't stick with it changing anytime soon. So I think that's what you're dealing with. Overall, again, check out the links below. You're going to see that link for the photos. Download them yourself. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Subscribe, like. We got some more stuff coming out. If you're a photo shooter and you're thinking about switching from Canon and Nikon, there are a lot of compelling reasons to switch and a couple reasons not to. And so if you're a Sony shooter already and sticking with the A9 cameras or the A99 cameras, so if you were an A99 Mark I shooter, you've waited a long time for an upgrade. Sony finally gave it to you. It's a huge improvement. You should be extremely happy with what you're giving here. That said, there are some things that keep going back and forth on between these two cameras. I do like actually having a flip out screen because when I'm shooting receptions at a wedding, I'm able to do this over the crowd and it's really nice to have. There are some things that I prefer about this camera. There are just some limitations that are keeping me from switching immediately like I had first expected. I had this thing on pre-order. I was going to switch out absolutely immediately. The video autofocus feature was a thing for me. And then also I'm finding myself switching a lot more to Sigma lenses, and those lenses aren't available anymore for here. And I wasn't too satisfied with the performance from this exact one. And this is one of the ones that would be my main shooter for wedding photography. So those are kind of my thoughts on it. Let me know if you disagree on that one. I still really like this camera and really want to see Sony develop something amazing, because I think that they're pushing the market forward in so many ways. So check out those pre-order links or the order links down below if you want to pick up this camera. Highly recommend it. It's a great shooter and the image quality is simply unbeatable in the market today. Thanks for watching.